Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, which is brought to you by Wellness Forum Health and the Wellness Forum Institute. First, something free coming up that I'm sure you want to know about. If you have not yet participated in one of these, I'm holding another free tour of our resources this Saturday at 1 p.m., April 6th, followed by a general health Q&A. So you can't ask me about personal health stuff, but you can ask me general health questions, a lot of the types of things that you guys email me about all the time, and I don't have time to type out answers, but I'm pretty good at talking, and you can ask me then. So if you want to participate, send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. The second thing is our Food Over Medicine Retreat is coming up April 26th and 27th. It's a 9-hour boot camp. This one you have to pay for, but Friday night, all day Saturday, Saturday night. And just like the last one, I'm including topics that you have asked me to include. So far, we've added Lyme disease, shingles vaccines, digestion, bone health, and the soy controversy to the mix of things we'll be talking about. I will soon be posting on our website a questionnaire that you're going to complete before, and we will schedule an implementation session afterwards to make sure that you're acting on the information that you learn from us during this boot camp. Last announcement is Dr. Carol Gifford's workshop coming up on dog and cat vaccines May 4th. It's time to register for that. There's a member, non-member price. So if you want information or to get started with any of these things, my email address is pampopper@msn.com. So we'll get to the health news now, and I'll start with a couple of questions from the boot camp that we didn't get to. And one is, can you comment on the research of Weston Price? That's easy. You didn't do any research. Weston Price was a dentist. I believe he was from Cleveland, and he and his wife embarked on a tour of the world during which he stopped in and visited with some primitive populations and took pictures of their teeth. So the book that he wrote includes a couple hundred pages or a lot of pictures of teeth. It's been a while since I looked at it. There are no references in this book. It's 1,000 pages of his hypothesizing about various things, including X factors in food that he didn't know about, but were likely the cause of the robust appearing health of these people. He did no studies whatsoever. Later, real scientists visited some of these places and refuted a lot of what he reported when they did some real studies and took blood samples and that sort of thing. So Weston Price didn't do any research, and anybody who represents that he did, you'd want to distance yourself from a health professional that would either misrepresent it or not be smart enough or educated enough or check into it enough to know that that's the case. Another question that we didn't get to was what the role of diet is in attention deficit disorder. And diet plays a role. It's not the only thing. And for most kids, changing their diet alone doesn't solve the problem, but it contributes in a couple of ways. First of all, kids eat a lot of highly processed stuff, junk food. They skip breakfast or they eat toaster pastries or some awful thing, and then lunch and the school schedules are not necessarily kid friendly. So it's not unusual for a child to eat some 200-calorie junk food type of breakfast, and then at noon lunch still hasn't happened and the kids really on empty. And I don't know about you, but when I'm really hungry, it's distracting. I don't feel like concentrating either. And also, water drinking in schools is prohibited. We don't want the kids getting up to go to the bathroom. So it's all about controlling kids. So dehydration and low glucose levels and living on less than optimal food can contribute. But again, there are behavioral issues. And like everything else I talk about, there's some complexities to it. But certainly, dietary change and adopting an optimal diet is a step in the right direction to help a kid who has ADD. Well, while we're talking about conditions, here's a powerful reason to work on achieving and maintaining optimal health and stay out of the medical mill. According to an analysis of emergency room visits, around 2 million Americans visit an emergency department annually due to adverse events related to medications that were prescribed. According to the analysis, almost 39% of these events resulted in hospitalization, and over 69% involved drugs that were either used as directed or mistakenly taken in errors that were unintentional by either adolescents or adults. The most common categories of drugs were anticoagulants, diabetes drugs, antibiotics, antiplatelet drugs, analgesics, and blood pressure, other cardiovascular drugs. Most of the prescriptions for these drugs are written for people who wouldn't need them if they change their diet and lifestyle habits. Not only is that more effective, diet change, exercise, stress reduction, hydration, sleep, much less harmful and much more effective than many of the drugs that are prescribed. So back to sign up for the boot camp, learn about how to stay out of the medical mill. And even if you've already learned how to stay out of the medical mill, I promise we're going to cover a lot of topics that you haven't heard me talk about before, some of which I'm sure will be suggested between now and the time that the boot camp takes place. While we're on the subject of harmful drugs, the truth is starting to come out about the obesity drugs that have become so popular lately. These include GLP-1 agonists such as Ozempic and Wegovy. Those are names you're probably pretty familiar with. The drugs work by curbing hunger, but it's not entirely clear how they actually work, the mechanisms of action, which should be a red flag for anybody who's prescribing them. This hasn't stopped the medical profession from prescribing the drugs to overweight people who continue to search for magic solutions for their weight and health issues. I've often likened this to people who try get rich quick schemes in an attempt to bypass the hard work and fiscal responsibility it takes to accumulate wealth, unless, of course, you inherited money, which most of us did not. So we have to do it the old fashioned way, work, save money, etc. Well, here's how these wonderful shortcuts for weight loss are working right now. First, those who are taking the popular drugs today who have taken in the past some type of anti-obesity medications don't lose as much weight as people who never used these drugs before. So the effect is highly variable, and many of the people taking these drugs this is not their first rodeo. They've taken a lot of such drugs in the past. Another problem is that people who stop taking the drugs regain most of the weight they lost within 1 year of discontinuation. So apparently, the only way to lose weight permanently with the drugs is to take them for life, but this is increasingly becoming a not very practical solution. First of all, due to the expense. Ozempic injections cost over $935 a month. Wegovy $1,349 per month. Now, most people taking the drugs have paid significantly less because their health insurance policies were billed for them, but many private insurers have discontinued their coverage. For example, Ascension stopped coverage for the drugs in July of 2023, and a lot of employers are specifically prohibiting them in their health insurance plans because they have become a major contributor to a 250% increase in premiums for employer-sponsored health plans during the first few months of 2023. And by the way, you've heard me talk about this before, that we have to have informed consumers and informed providers meeting in wellness forum clinics for healthcare, because there's no possible way to ever pay for this based on the numbers that I just gave you. And this is just one class of drugs, right? Side effects are horrific and include low blood sugar, nausea, heartburn, vomiting, stomach pain, diarrhea, constipation, sore throat, symptoms of stomach flu, dizziness, changes in vision, thoughts about hurting yourself, signs of thyroid tumor like swelling or lump in the neck or trouble swallowing, symptoms of pancreatitis, gallbladder disease, kidney disease, and stomach paralysis. I guess other than that, they're great drugs, right? Dozens of lawsuits have already been filed by lawyers representing people who've been harmed, some of them permanently injured. In the meantime, what caught my attention that led me to want to talk about this was an article posted on Medscape advising medical doctors how to help patients who want to stop the drugs. And I was dumbfounded by this. So I'm just going to gloss over it real quick, and then I'm going to put this in next week's newsletter because I think some of you will want to read it. So the first thing that the doctors are supposed to do is ask why the patient wants to discontinue the drug. And if the patient's concerned about risk, the doctor is supposed to point out that patients will gain 2/3 or more of their weight back in the first year after discontinuing the drugs. Quote, you're not trying to persuade them, only to equip them to make a well-informed choice. But clearly that would be persuasive, I think. So the first step is see if you can keep them on the drugs. Patients often ask how long they'll need to take the drugs. The suggested response in the article is to tell the patient that obesity is not a personal failure, but rather due to genetic and biological factors. Quote, we're biased to believe that this is not a disease state, that this is a character flaw. So it's not your fault. You can't help it. There's nothing you can do except take drugs. Patients should then be given a primer on the biology of obesity, which includes the fact that the body tries to fight against weight loss. Now, a very important omission is that this is true in response to starvation, really, really calorie restricted diets, which are often prescribed 700,000 calorie a day diets. But this is not what happens when people permanently change to a health promoting, plant based, low fat, high fiber diet. It's not the response. So that's left out. And then they should say patients should expect their appetites to increase after discontinuing the drugs. Maybe tapering would be a good idea. But then the article goes in an entirely different direction. And then the doctors are said, if none of this works, then what you want to do is recommend cognitive behavioral therapy or help the patient create a habit template, prescribe exercise, create an environment for success, such as getting all the bad food out of your house, referrals to dietitians and personal trainers and mental health therapists. And so the whole disturbing thing with these drugs is that they cause serious and sometimes life-threatening side effects. They're almost useless for weight loss because the effect that you're going to get is temporary. You can't stay on them for life. I don't think anybody really believes that they're to be taken for life. Most people can't afford to take them as insurance companies increasingly cut off reimbursement. I see a time coming when they will just be excluded from coverage by any policy. So you do your best, in spite of all those things, to keep the patient on the drug. And then if that doesn't work, then you start telling the patient the things that he or she can do to help themselves, like eat right, exercise, drink water, see a cognitive therapist, referral to a dietitian. It's absolutely insane. But the drugs are horrible. There is no shortcut here. And there's just no working around the hard work that it takes to get your body in shape. And so, those of you who took my boot camp back in March, might remember we talked about getting your mind in the right place, figuring out what your values are. And if your values include health, then you have to bring your behavior in alignment with that. That's the first step. And a lot of the reason why people are miserable is that when it comes to diet and exercise and health and many other aspects of their lives, their behavior simply doesn't mirror what their thoughts and intentions are for their lives. So, if you like that type of direction, you want to learn more about that, the March boot camp, we dove into it pretty great, and we're going to do that again with the April boot camp. So I hope to see some of you there so we can work on these issues and go even deeper. I guess that's about all for now. That's enough for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.